Out of great compassion, he adopted the turbid world and made 500 great aspirations. He was praised as the white lotus. Whoever hears his name will never decline the path. I prostrate respectfully to my Guru, the venerable great compassion. From the holy site of Mount Wutai, the blessing of Manjushri and are infused into your heart. I pray at the feet of Lama Jigme Phuntsok, may I attend your heart transmission and blessings. In order to liberate all sentient beings, please generate the supreme bodhicitta. Today, this is the first class of Song of Victory, the wonderful sound of the celestial drum. In fact, this is composed by His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, and most of our Dharma friends are quite familiar with this teaching. This is one of the pith teachings of Phuntsok Rinpoche. Throughout his lifetime, His Holiness produced several concise and extraordinary teachings, such as Drop of My Heartfelt Advice, Nectar Drop of Advice, Teaching During Time of Magnetizing, and Song of Victory. These teachings are the essence of His Holiness's wisdom, gained through a lifetime of study, contemplation, and practice, which are extremely precious. These pith teachings are very much precious. Unlike the texts which ordinary people compose for 2 or 3 years or after 2 or 3 years. In fact, these texts are not like the ordinary articles which are drawn from a few years of academic research. It's not like that at all. On the contrary, Phuntsok Rinpoche's level of realization, his life legend, and his vast merit have proven him to be a great sage and an enlightened master. In each of his lifetimes, spanning from the time of Buddha Shakyamuni to that of Guru Padmasambhava, not only has he accumulated abundant good karma in his previous lives, but during his present life, from the time he was around 5 years old to his late 60s, he has spent over 60 years focusing solely on the study, contemplation, and practice of the Buddha Dharma. His Holiness has devoted his entire life to all beings and Buddhism. His words and teachings distilled from such a deep well of wisdom are indeed very precious. Personally, I often ponder that. For ordinary people, though they write and publish books, they need to rely on external references. And then they would add their own conceptual thoughts to complete their books, and then later disseminate them to the public. However, Phuntsok Rinpoche, from his childhood all the way until his death, devoted all of his time and effort to propagate the Dharma and to benefit all sentient beings. Rinpoche's life was quite different from those of ordinary people. Ordinary people would go to school, start their own families after graduation, and then spend almost all their time on their children, family, work, and themselves. And then, in their spare time, they would do some research and write some books. So these books, in terms of the effort and time put into it, as well as the value, are very much different from Rinpoche's teaching. So we should know this teaching is indeed supreme. Those with wisdom and those who have wisdom will fully understand how transcendent it is after they study it. In the past, when His Holiness gave us the teachings, we did not recognize their great value. However, as time went by, after consistent contemplation of the Dharma, along with exposure to various religious doctrines and all kinds of conceptual thoughts of worldly people, only then we realized that His Holiness is indeed the most extraordinary of human beings. It's not because he is my Guru and that I have to praise him, just as is stated in the text text praise of the Buddha for transcending all divine beings, we should maintain an objective and impartial manner always. So my praise is only based on my objective observation of his wisdom. I hope that you too will observe carefully. Why are we learning the Song of Victory today? For more than 2 years, we have been studying earnestly and focusing mainly the way of the Bodhisattva, Bodhicharyavatara, among other shastras. A while ago, we completed all the study of them. So, the courses of the first semester have all been completed. And now, we begin the second semester. So, in the second semester, in this curriculum, I want to combine practices together with theoretical study. For Dharma practitioners, I think we should study extensively on both sutras and tantras, such as the 5 great Mahayana treatises. But life is really short, and it's very difficult to speculate. And it's hard to know how much longer one will live. Many changes can happen really quickly. About a week ago, I met a Dharma teacher in Luhuo County. At the time, we discussed many issues about stopping the killing of animals and saving their lives. At the time, we had a great conversation. But because of an accident, he passed away yesterday. He was still alive a week ago. Life can slip away in a blink of an eye. It is the same for every one of us. Therefore, I plan to prioritize the practices before other lessons. If time permits in the future, we will continue to study other related treatises. Of course, the Sanghas in our monastery have almost finished all the studies of the 5 great treatises, and I will teach the ornament of clear realization later, but other than that, we finished the other 4. However, many of our Dharma friends living in the cities have just begun their study and have not yet learned the vast and profound teachings of Buddha Dharma. However, many people, while delving into such studies, may leave this world before completion. So we should put a great emphasis on practice. Thus, in the second semester, we will focus on the combining practice and theoretical study. Now, there are 3 groups: the Pure Land group, the preliminary practice group, as well as the ornament of clear realization study group. I noticed that over 70 to 80% of people chose the preliminary practice class. Thus, we'll consider preliminary practice as a main course. Meanwhile, I hope that all of us, the listener and the lecturer, can complete this Dharma study from beginning to the end. Of course, we cannot be sure of that just by thinking and wishing for it. I myself have thought a lot about this. In the next 2 years, will we be able to continue to practice? Are we going to give up practicing due to obstacles? Will we still be alive? I just thought about this many times, but the only thing that we can do is to pray to the Guru and 3 jewels. Ponce Rinpoche requested that all of his lineage disciples to teach and to chant the Song of Victory once before they begin teaching or studying a new Dharma text, so that any obstacles that may occur during their process can be dispelled. Rinpoche mentioned repeatedly that there is a very profound causal origination, which cannot be speculated through our discriminative mind. I firmly believe in this. Therefore, at the beginning of this semester, we should be cautious of unfavorable conditions and obstacles. Otherwise, in this degenerating time, we tend to give up easily when some obstacles are encountered. So I really hope that we can finish the preliminary practices within 2 years of time. That will be the greatest achievement of our lifetimes. Your parents may leave you with houses, property, and wish-fulfilling jewels even, but you cannot take this along with you when death comes. The benefits and bonuses distributed by your career will not follow you either. But by practicing diligently, if you build a solid foundation of preliminary practices, this will make a good start for all of your future lives. Therefore, I myself have made the determination to join you and vow to do the preliminary practices again. But before that, I will first start with this teaching of Song of Victory. The Song of Victory is a spontaneous Vajra Doha that gushed out of Phuntsok Rinpoche's wisdom. I think the story behind this song are quite familiar to all of you. The story goes as back in 1995, His Holiness Phuntsok Rinpoche appeared to be gravely ill. In September, the original plan was that Phuntsok Rinpoche will visit Taiwan and then go to Nepal, and he intended to retreat in Padmasambhava's cave for an Amatayas Buddha practice. But after he arrived in Chengdu, there was some problem related to the process of his passport application. He was also suffering from a deterioration of his health. The hospital in Chengdu was unable to diagnose the cause of his illness. Rinpoche stayed at a resort at the time that is called the International Cosmopolitan. It was a newly developed resort at that time. And over there, Phuntsok Rinpoche ended up staying at Chengdu for more than 5 months. I was there by his side, and I remember that during the entire period, His Holiness remained in a state of samadhi. Other than meal times, he did not even utter a single word. All of us alongside of him were very worried about him, for we did not know why he was not speaking. But looking back now, at the time Rinpoche was still with us, and now he is nowhere to be found. No matter how much we miss him, how sad and heartbroken we are, we cannot find him in the 3,000-fold world. However, back then, even though our Guru Phuntsok Rinpoche kept silent at that time, we were still able to pay homage to him. We should have been very happy. What a pity we didn't realize that at the time. Later, as described in the biography of Phuntsok Rinpoche, it stated that once in Rinpoche's dream, Venerable Atisha and Venerable Duntrumpa, Drumnipa Rinpoche, and Lama Lodro all appeared in front of him. Venerable Atisha remained silent in that dream, and Venerable Duntrumpa said, "Venerable Atisha is very concerned about you. And now, these great surging waves of the ocean will be determined on the 10th of March. Do you understand the implications?" That's what Venerable Drumpa asked Phuntsok Rinpoche. And then Drumnipa Rinpoche manifested in the wrathful form of Padmasambhava in order to dispel all inner, outer, and sacred obstacles and vanquish various kinds of evil manifested from confusion and differentiation. And then Lama Lodro compassionately gave advice as such: you should reside in the luminous state of great perfection, the great union of appearance and emptiness. Out of this profound concentration, you should benefit sentient beings with bodhicitta, exchanging others' suffering with their happiness, and then all unfavorable conditions will disappear into emptiness. After this dream, as predicted by Venerable Drumpa, His Holiness had completely recovered by March the 10th. And then we returned to Larungar. Upon returning to Larungar, His Holiness sang this Song of Victory spontaneously among the fourfold assembly of all disciples. The happiness of everybody at that moment was indescribable. His Holiness then named the assembly of the Han disciple as Victorious Subdue Mara Land, which symbolized the great victory. The title says the Song of Victory. Why victory? because practitioners can dispel all inner, outer, and secret obstacles and achieve the complete victory through the blessing of the Guru and three jewels. And this is what it means. So this song refers to Vajra song, Vajra. Just as celestial beings were able to defeat asuras with the help of celestial drum, the drum is a symbol of victory of celestial beings. So the song represents the same for us. This short text contains the very profound pith instructions of Phuntsog Rinpoche's lifetime of practice. So that was the background of this text. The content can be divided into three parts: the opening, the main text, and the ending. The opening, including the title and the homage, we've already briefly explained the title. The embodiment of the wisdom of all the Buddhas, who are the protectors of all sentient beings. Venerable Manjughosha, who appears as a young boy, may you abide forever in my heart. The statement of the eight-petaled lotus, bless me such that my words will be benefit all sentient beings. Phuntsog Rinpoche had always regarded Manjushri as his main deity, especially after meeting Manjushri in person at Mount Wutai. So he would first pay homage to Manjushri before composing any treatise. This also demonstrates his extraordinary faith in Manjushri. This verse here means that Buddhas of the 10 directions are the protectors of all sentient beings, and the wisdom of all of them that is embodied in Manjushri. As for Manjushri, I think you probably all know we have introduced him before as well. Manjushri always appears as a youth to benefit all sentient beings. And the blessings of Manjushri is like the sunlight, which can irradiate the lotus to bloom and exude fragrance. Similarly to the metaphor, the unique wisdom of the blessings of Manjushri dissolves into the author's heart of eight-petaled lotus. Why the eight petals? This analogy is drawn between the eight-petaled lotus and the heart, which has many inner, outer, and sacred meanings in Vajrayana. But over here, I won't discuss that in detail. Anyhow, it means that I pray that the bright sunlight of Manjushri's blessings fills and will remain perpetually in the center of my lotus heart. I pray that with the power of Manjushri's compassion, my words can benefit all the sentient beings without exception. So His Holiness Jigme Phuntsog Rinpoche, when he composed this text, he neither did it for the sake of recovering from his grave illness. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsog Rinpoche, when he composed this text, he neither did it for the sake of recovering from his grave illness, nor for the desire to become wealthy, nor to attain happiness for himself. Rather, he prayed for Manjushri's blessing, that through his words and his teachings, all living beings, temporarily and ultimately, will all receive benefits. Likewise, we also need to examine our own motives when receiving a teaching. Some people muddle along without any sense of purpose. They see others going to class, so they just tag along. And some think we start learning preliminary practices, might as well just go to this one as well. As a matter of fact, none of these motivations are correct. The purpose of receiving the Dharma teaching should be to benefit the immeasurable sentient beings, not just for the benefit of oneself. Each practitioner should turn his or her motivation accordingly in this way. This is very important. To benefit sentient beings, that should be the only purpose. And everyone can benefit from the blessings of Manjushri. The key lies in whether or not one has authentic faith in him. Manjushri is the embodiment of the wisdom of all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions. He is regarded as the father of all Buddhas, as he has guided infinite sentient beings to achieve Buddhahood. And Buddhas, by motivating them to arouse bodhicitta from the start. And yet he himself has not yet become Buddha. It has been recorded in the biography of Manjushri Bodhisattva. Once the Buddha was teaching the Dharma at Vulture Peak. In the city below the mountain, there is a prostitute named Marvelous Golden Ray. She was very beautiful, and more amazingly, her entire body emanated golden aura. Thus, the emperor and ministers and all sorts of men became extremely enchanted by her. Although she was just a prostitute from a lowly caste, a huge crowd always surrounded her. And one day, she was accompanied with the son of a business owner to an amusement park. Along the way, Manjushri transformed himself into a handsome young man as he knew the circumstances for her to get enlightened were mature. He appeared in such a way that his entire body glowed with an extraordinary, dazzling light. And then at that time, Marvelous Golden Ray, the beautiful woman, noticed that the light radiating from the youth surpassed her own golden rays. As she stood in the glow of his light, her own light faded away, and she was so embarrassed, as well as desirous for his clothing and his body, because he was so beautiful. So she wanted to be with him because she was tempted by his beauty. At that moment, Manjushri empowered Vajravana to advise her. So Vajravana then advised her, saying that he should not arouse your grade for the young man, as he is the Bodhisattva Manjushri, who is the embodiment of the wisdom of all the Buddhas. He can fulfill all your wishes. So what do you want? And Marvelous Golden Ray said, I do not need anything but his beautiful clothing. And Manjushri then replied, if you can enter the door of Bodhi, then I will give you my clothing. As she did not understand what that entails, just as many people nowadays don't understand what that entails, so Manjushri then started to give her detailed instructions of how to enter the door of Bodhi. During the course of Manjushri's teaching, Shakyamuni Buddha voiced his praise, saying, well done at Vulture Peak. And that jolted the cosmos of a billion universe. Manjushri's retinue asked the Buddha why he had said this. The Buddha replied, Manjushri Bodhisattva is preaching the Buddha Dharma with compassion and wisdom in order to enlighten a prostitute. You may go there if you would like to listen. So many of the Buddha's disciples then went to Manjushri. In a way, that is just like how the Dharma teacher is teaching and other masters come along and offering empowerment, then the disciple would rush and receive empowerment on the other side. Many of the disciples of the Buddha went to listen to Manjushri's teachings. Some disciples obtained the purity of the Dharma eye to see the truth clearly and purely. Some attained the full apprehension of the truth of no birth. Some achieved the non-regression fruition. Tens of thousands of sentient beings received a corresponding fruition. Marvelous Golden Ray also developed a firm understanding of the teaching, and nothing has its own self-nature. She really wanted to follow Manjushri and live her life as a Buddhist nun. But Manjushri told her that the path of renunciation does not necessarily mean to shaving off one's hair, rather involves practicing Buddha Dharma diligently and giving up one's self-interest for the benefit of others. Then he advised her to leave with the son of the merchant and continue their journey to amusement park. But when they did finally arrive at the amusement park, Marvelous Golden Ray died in the arm of the son of merchant. At first, the son was greatly saddened, just as the reflection on repulsiveness described. The corpse of the beauty started to gradually decay, and he finally became extremely frightened, and he ran all the way to Vulture Peak to seek protection from the Shakyamuni Shakyamuni Buddha. The Shakyamuni Buddha imparted the Dharma to him, and then he attained full comprehension of the truth of no birth. The Buddha then predicted, due to the empowerment of Manjushri in inspiring our motivation, then marvelous golden ray will attain Buddhahood and then become the precious light Buddha. And the son of the business owner will become a bodhisattva acting on her behalf, named a bodhisattva virtuous brilliance. The son was puzzled. Why will the disciple of Manjushri Bodhisattva attain Buddhahood? But I, the disciple of the Buddha, will only become a bodhisattva. So he could not understand this. Then the Buddha started explaining to him, saying that I also made my initial vow to develop bodhicitta in front of Manjushri, as did an immeasurable number of Buddhas in the past. So have an immeasurable number of Buddhas of the present, and will it be for the immeasurable number of Buddhas in the future. The merits of Manjushri are inconceivable. Therefore, everyone who's present here, you should really follow that as well. As Phuntsok Rinpoche often emphasized that we should chant Manjushri's mantra frequently and pray to Manjushri often, because the power of the blessings from Manjushri are quite special compared with those of other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. As ordinary beings, we cannot determine whether Buddha Shakyamuni's blessings or Manjushri's blessings is more powerful, but it is quite possible to make a reasonable conclusion according to relevant sutras, and this has been explained in relevant sutras. If we constantly pray to Manjushri, wisdom will be bestowed upon this person lifetime after lifetime. And meanwhile, blessings from all the Buddhas can be integrated and passed on in one's mind's continuity. Manjushri may appear as just a bodhisattva, but based on what is mentioned in the sutras, he actually attained Buddhahood a long time ago. Hence, the power of his blessings is inconceivably amazing. Of course, some people such as Phuntsok Rinpoche have always had a close affinity with Manjushri since his childhood. According to Phuntsok Rinpoche's biography, he recited the Manjushri mantra, Om Mara Pasanadi, aloud immediately after he was born. At the age of 6, he discovered a copy of Satna of the speech line of Manjushri. Originally, this text was from India, but it was hidden in a pile of rocks. That's where he discovered it. When he noticed a verse at the end of this text where it says that there was a man in India, aged 99 years old, who, after just one day of practice, attained enlightenment, when Manjushri appeared in front of him. So, this elderly man of 99 years old in the Holy Land of India encountered the sadhana of lying speech of Manjushri. At the time, he was illiterate, but he prayed and practiced with sincere faith, and in just one day, he met Manjushri and attained accomplishment. Then, Phuntsok Rinpoche thought to himself, if someone that old could meet Manjushri after just one day of practice, why can't I practice this, for I'm still so very young? He was very thrilled and then practiced it. Consequently, he naturally mastered all the scriptures and commentaries in the sutras and tantras. So, through praying to Manjushri Bodhisattva, our wisdom can surely be increased. Some people often say to me, I'm very dull in wisdom. Please bless me with your breath and give me a pet. This may not be effective. Of course, if one's teacher is a Siddha, this probably will work. But if you pray to Manjushri with faith, I believe you'll certainly gain some wisdom. When we visited Mount Wutai, I was constantly filled with lots of hope that I would see Manjushri in person. But I was able to memorize and fully recite Dharma texts that I couldn't before, after reading them only a few times over there. Although I did not see Manjushri in person over there, I was blessed in some ways. Texts including the aspiration of the great perfection and the praise to Manjushri, which I couldn't recite before, but I was able to memorize them after repeating only a few times when I was at Mount Wutai. So I think that that different people may have different levels of faith, but as long as they are blessed by manjushri, the meanings of all scriptures and commentaries in sutras and tantras will come to manifest in their minds. Unlike some people who memorize with great difficulty but forget rather easily, we should rely on the blessings of manjushri in such a case. The purpose of acquiring this wisdom should be to use this to benefit sentient beings instead of selfish interest. This is very important. Otherwise, some individuals who are very smart use their intelligence to deceive others. A while ago, I was at a gathering and witnessed someone who claimed to be a toku. He obviously felt terrific about himself, and a lot of disciples were extremely reverent towards him. I then read his resume where it says that he was the incarnation of a great master. I thought he was for real and then had a great confidence in him, well, almost. But as I continued reading, it was stated in Chinese language that he had received a PhD. Then I was curious about his doctoral diploma. So I continued reading the Tibetan version, and it turned out that it was not a doctoral diploma, but a certificate of hearing in classes, where then listing the Dharma classes that he had attended. But above this is stated doctoral diploma. Concerning the part where he was confirmed to be a toku, I thought that he must have been confirmed by a master. So I read Tibetan text, and then it stated that a master felt that he might be a toku and asked another master to verify whether he was not. And then that sentence left with a question mark. But above this, it was stated that he had been authenticated as a great toku already, who is very famous and revered by many disciples. Thus, if one's intelligence becomes just a method to deceive others, it only harms oneself and others as well. According to the Venerable Longchenpa, in his book Finding Comfort and Ease in the Nature of the Mind, where it says that although some masters have followers as numerous as maggots, they can only lead themselves and their followers to be reborn in hell realm. It is meaningless. Therefore, people who have an altruistic mind will never do such things or act against the Dharma. Even sometimes if an altruistic person seemingly did not act in accord with the Dharma, his motivation are not for himself, but for the sentient beings. So I think we, practitioners, should consider altruism as the first priority on every occasion. If so, even someone's behavior may seem to have deviated from the Dharma, they actually have very profound intentions. So here it says that Pontu Rinpoche prays for his words to be of benefit of all sentient beings. Now the main text, which has 4 sections. These 4 sections are, first, encouraging people to engage in Vajrayana practice, then giving rise to bodhicitta, cultivating the mind of renunciation, and lastly, developing virtuous personalities. From these 4 aspects. In fact, the progressive stages of this treatise are very clear. In the 3 principal aspects of the path by Tsongkhapa, he discussed the 3 main aspects, which are renunciation, bodhicitta, and non-dual wisdom. But over here, the entire path has been summarized into 4 main aspects. Why 4? Because in this Song of Victory, non-dual wisdom is described from the perspective of great perfection or Dzogchen. Non-dual wisdom can be explained within both Mahayana and Vajrayana path. The 3 principal aspects of the path by Je Tsongkhapa only discussed the non-dualistic wisdom of middle way in Sutrayana. Here, great perfection, the highest level of realization in Vajrayana practice, is described based on the view of emptiness. It is the most supreme enlightenment worthy of pursuit by spiritual practitioners. What is the prerequisite for such enlightenment then? It is bodhicitta. Without bodhicitta, as stated in the way of bodhisattva, there is no way to achieve full enlightenment. Enlightenment must rely on bodhicitta. How can bodhicitta arise in one's mind then? One needs to first possess the renunciation mind, which in turn has to be founded on a virtuous personality. Thus, the sequence of practice should be generate a virtuous personality to be a good person first, and a mind of renunciation to abandon all worldly attachment, make aspiration of bodhicitta, to guide all living beings to attain Buddhahood, and eventually practice Dzogchen, or the teaching of prajna. So you should think it over. For ordinary people, there are 84,000 teachings taught by the Buddha. I visited some bookstores in Hong Kong, the United States, and China, and in large bookstores, there are tons of books on Buddhism. How can one possibly study all of them in a short lifetime? It is definitely impossible. However, now Pongtsog Rinpoche has summarized all these teachings into this wonderful pith instruction to attain Buddhahood. One must practice non-dual wisdom. To obtain non-dual wisdom, one must have renunciation, bodhicitta, and virtue. These 4 points have captured the essence of all Dharma. Thus, we should set life goals and make a plan accordingly. As I often say, you should take up the responsibilities for treading your own path instead of putting all the responsibilities on your guru. Nowadays, when people found out that their masters have made mistakes, they would say, no, my master is a Buddha. A Buddha. How could a Buddha make any mistakes? Just as how a common Tibetan saying says, you have other people's meat in your own mouth, yet you deny the fact that you're a thief. And they would continue to say that they did not steal others' meat while eating it. When clearly the master is a terrible person, how can we still say, no, the master is a Buddha? We definitely are not like this. In fact, based on Pongtsog Rinpoche's contribution to Buddhism and the powerful blessings for disciples' practice, from these 2 aspects, we can be sure that Rinpoche is indeed a living Buddha who has manifested himself to enlighten the sentient beings in this degenerated age. So we just talked about the 4 main points. The first one is to encourage people for the engagement of practicing Vajrayana. This includes the merits of practicing unsurpassed Vajrayana and the condition for practicing Dzogchen. These are the 2 aspects. And the verses says that the great perfection, profound and luminous, just upon hearing its verses, allows one break the roots of samsara. And through the 6-month practice of its essence to achieve liberation, may you all engrave this in your heart. The first part, the merit of practicing Vajrayana, means that the unsurpassed great perfection, proclaiming the luminous essence of Tathagarbha. It is difficult for ordinary people to fully understand it, and it is often criticized by those of poor wisdom. Such teaching is the great perfection, and is taught primarily by the Nyingmapa school in Tibetan Buddhism. And there are other schools that have Yamataka or Mahamudra, etc. And from the aspect of Sutrayana, their most supreme Dharma practice is the great middle way. The teaching of great perfection has great merit. People can attain liberation by merely hearing its words, touching its text, thinking of it, carrying its text, or understanding its meaning. It is liberation upon seeing, hearing, caring, and touching. And its merits are beyond all descriptions. For someone who has never ridden on a tractor, how could they believe in the existence of aircrafts which can carry people in the sky? A little yak herder may have never ridden on a tractor. How could such a child believe in the existence of aircraft if he had only ridden on the back of yak every day? Likewise, the realization of non-dual wisdom of great perfection is hard for one to believe if one had never practiced it. As for me, although I am not enlightened, I have practiced for more than 20 years and have been contemplating with my own wisdom repeatedly. I have personal insights of its genuine benefits. So when someone quotes partially from great perfection out of context and concludes the Vajrayana is not in accord with real Dharma, I only chuckle over it and feel it is not necessary to respond to their opinion. I'd think that so sorry that he has such limited wisdom. How shallow. Other than that, we're not concerned about if those people would bring along any reasonable evidence and inferences to refute Vajrayana teaching. People do not understand Vajrayana and have never been to Tibet. Even if they travel to Tibet and study with Tibetan Buddhists for 2 or 3 months, they still may not even understand the basic reasoning of great perfection. I've met many PhDs and postdoctorates who were very arrogant at the beginning, but then they couldn't even follow the basic inferences of the middle way and Buddhist logic, let alone the great perfection. They initially thought that Buddhism was as simple as physics or chemistry, but then discovered that it is not. And then gradually, they started to develop faith in Buddha Dharma. So, Buddha Dharma teaching, such as the great perfection, can eradicate the root causes of samsara simply by listening to its verses. According to Aradeva's 400 stanzas on the middle way, where it says that people with doubts about emptiness are still able to break free from the 3 realms. This is even more true for those who have learned the answer path of Vajrayana. If someone with extraordinary faith and strong conviction practices Dzogchen by following the steps of making aspiration, main practice, and concluding practices, that person may attain liberation in 6 months of time. It is stated in the Vajrapajara Tantra, where it says that if one has been practicing for 6 months with unshaken faith and conviction, one will be able to attain fruition of Vajradhara. This has also been cited by the 50 verses on how to serve a guru. It is mentioned in the Tantric Solemn Oath, with determined faith and conviction, one will attain fruition of Vajradhara in 6 months. This has also been cited by Dzogchen text, finding comfort and ease in illusion and finding comfort and ease in meditation. It says that those with great capacities are able to attain the fruition of Vajradhara if they practice the essence diligently for a short period of 6 months. This is also further stated in Jetsun Ningti and Longchen Ningti. Some of you may have not received the empowerment, but it is all right since we're only discussing its merit and did not expose the actual practice. And indeed, among Rinpoche's lineage disciples, I have personally witnessed quite a few Dzogchen practitioners who attained the realization of Dzogchen and had auspicious signs of attainment before death. I, in fact, wrote a treatise on rainbow body achievement and attainment. I think you probably have already read it. I was particularly impressed with one Han bhikkhuni whose name was Minghui. I have mentioned her several times in class. It was back in 1993 on September 1st. We had completed studying the instructions on the 3 virtues of relaxation in the nature state of mind. Minghui had enormous faith in Vajrayana. Originally, she was being treated for an illness in mainland. Later, she learned that Phuntsok Rinpoche was going to teach Dzogchen at Larungar. She felt that life was impermanent, and not knowing how long she would live, she insisted on going back to receive the teaching. His Holiness lectured for about 100 days, but during the period of time, she studied very diligently. On September 1st, 1993, class ended and she went back to see the doctor. On March the 1st, 1994, her caretaker and Dharma friend Zenru Bhikkhuni called me from Golden Phoenix Monastery. At that time, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't even have a good landline telephone. The phone that we had was barely operating. One day at noon, I got a phone call from Zenru, who told me that Minghui had died, and all kinds of auspicious signs appeared. I checked the time. It was exactly 6 months from the day of the end of teaching. Not even a day short. It was incredible. People around her at the time remembered clearly that her body shrank, and at the moment of her passing, she was in the dignified sitting posture while praying to the lineage gurus and Amitabha. Hence, I firmly believe that with the blessings of Vajrayana, one can have great attainment in 6 months. Just now, around noon, I took a nap for a while and I dreamt about her. Right. What were we talking about? Right, dreams. However, cannot reveal too much, for if I talk too much, there will be all kinds of speculations. In fact, Minghui did not always appear to be highly intelligent, but her faith was indeed very strong. The prerequisites for those with great capacities are primarily their faith and conviction. Those with the strongest faith in their gurus and three jewels, and especially in Vajrayana, will never part with such faith even on their deathbeds. These kind of people indeed will have great attainment. Hence, Khenpo Rinpoche made a comment that it is very difficult to encounter the great perfection during this degenerate age, for it is such an extraordinary path. We must have these words engraved in our mind. For those in our audience, most of you have already encountered Vajrayana, but other Dharma friends might have not had such an opportunity. This is all right. The words of my perfect teacher, this text also belongs to the teaching of Vajrayana. You can practice this as a start. Many Vajrayana followers nowadays believe that in order to practice the Vajrayana, they must start with empowerment, in order to efficiently discover the nature of mind. But this is not necessarily true, and I do not advise others to copy this kind of behavior. Indeed, as an ordinary practitioner, one must start with the preliminary practices, which followed by receiving empowerment and then the main practice. The insights, in fact, are very different than the state of enlightenment. They're two completely different things. It is crucial to follow these steps that is described by Venerable Longchenpa, Mipa Rinpoche, and Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche. They have all set out rigorous requirements for practicing the Dzogchen, but perhaps due to some teachers' unique approach in teaching students. These days, some students start from bottom up. As such, it is like painting beautiful motifs on the wall of a building while the foundations have not yet been stabilized. The risk of doing that is, after a while, the whole building will collapse. Therefore, we should paint motifs on the walls only after foundations are made secure and safe. Here, His Holiness Phuntsok Rinpoche told us that since the great perfection is so extraordinary, we must not abandon or defame it. If one really cannot arouse faith in it, it is okay to discuss this with Dharma teachers of Tibetan Buddhism. It is okay that you don't have faith. Also, there are people who practice Sutrayana, they don't have faith in Sutrayana as well. However, one must not have preconceived negative ideas about Vajrayana without sufficient reasoning. For example, in Chinese Buddhism, some eminent monks discredited Vajrayana, but later had regretted it and expressed their contrition. We have mentioned this many times. That's why, firstly, it says the great perfection is transcendental, and we must rely on this supreme Dharma. Mipa Rinpoche said in his teaching, in this degenerate age, beings are loaded with deep and heavy afflictions, which cannot be easily tamed by other Dharma methods, but one can completely cut off all afflictions with the unsurpassed great perfection. I have thought many times this year, if I only teach Sutrayana Dharma every day, it is definitely not sufficient, as we put aside such superior Vajrayana teachings. Of course, Sutrayana is very good, and its ultimate doctrines are very close to Vajrayana teachings. But after researching them both for a long period of time, I found that in certain aspects, they're still very different. We are not against of Sutrayana, but you will understand it after we study it. Therefore, starting from this year, I boldly ask you to start preliminary practices. Recently, feedbacks from various locations have been really good. Only a few registered for the Pure Land study group due to age or other reasons. My original estimation was that the registration would be divided into half between Pure Land and preliminary practices group. But it seems that many people have a better understanding of Vajrayana now. Previously, due to the reasons like transportation, languages, tradition, and history, people didn't know the true meaning of Vajrayana. People jump into conclusions only only based on the superficial behaviors of those who consider themselves as Vajrayana practitioners, and mistakenly take that magical powers and some specific behaviors are considered as Vajrayana. In fact, none of these can represent the true essence of Vajrayana. Now that we have opportunity to study Vajrayana together, we should all have devout faith in it. Now we move to the next subject, the conditions for practicing Dzogchen. Those with great fortune encounter such supreme teachings must have been accumulating merits in their previous lives through numerous eons and possess the same conditions for achieving enlightenment with the Buddha Sammatabhadra. Dharma friends, may you all be joyful for yourselves. We have an opportunity to meet the Guru of great perfection and receive empowerments and teachings. Actually, Suragama mantra, Pure Land Rebirth mantra, which are recited even by Sutrayana disciples. In fact, those practices are all part of Vajrayana teachings. If we say that in Sutrayana there is no Vajrayana at all, that is not true. The hidden profound meanings of Sutrayana are clearly explained in Vajrayana. All of us have had the good fortune to encounter such profound Vajrayana. Such wondrous affinities with Vajrayana are the result of good karma accumulated through many lives. Venerable Longchenpa made two inferences in the treasury of Supreme Vehicle. The first one says, since we have encountered the unsurpassed Vajrayana in this life, we must have made offerings, attending, also following an infinite number of Buddhas in our past lives. The second one is that since we have encountered the Vajrayana, we will definitely accomplish realization either in this present life or during the bardo or in the future lives. So, according to the inferences of Buddhist logic, if one has heard this and studied Vajrayana, this person must have auspicious affinities with Vajrayana. Some people have already received empowerment from a lineage, but they still ask questions like, Teacher, do I have good karma to study the Vajrayana? These people really don't understand Buddhist logic. If you have already received the empowerment, how are you still asking this question? This is really a question that reveals your ignorance. So, whoever has encountered Vajrayana in this life, not only do you have affinity with Vajrayana in this lifetime, I can assure you that in the uncountable past lifetimes, you had also made such affiliations with Vajrayana, with many masters and many Buddhas. I'm not speaking out of my own discursive thoughts. This was remarked by Venerable Longchenpa, who is a highly regarded master in Tibetan by everyone. We're in fact sharing similar circumstances with Buddha Sammatabhadra, for we are able to encounter Dzogchen in this present life. It is because of transcendental tantric dharma that Sammatabhadra attained the state of self-liberation in one moment. As it is said in Prajnaparamita Sutra, a person who is lost and wandering in the forest would have the sense that he was close to a village once he saw a cattleman, and would leave behind his fear of being lost. Similarly, encountering Vajrayana means that we will soon be liberated, like a fish that has been hooked and will surely be pulled to the shore. With the same logic, for us to encounter a Vajra Guru and a Vajrayana teaching, there must be profound causes and conditions behind. Therefore, Phuntsog Rinpoche said humbly at this point that, Dharma friends, you are now encountering such a great teaching, you should all be so delighted. Do not trap yourself with all kinds of doubts again. I think some people often think a lot of these negative things instead of the good. All those kinds of thoughts are unnecessary. You should concentrate on practicing the Dharma. Encountering the great perfection is the result of accumulated merits of many, many lifetimes, and you should be delighted about it. Just like Phuntsog Rinpoche said, in the delightful sound of practice, he said that as long as one does not break the vows in this present life, one will at least become enlightened in the next life. Even if one does not practice diligently, you should think like this, and your faith faith will grow. However, if one slander Vajrayana or betray the Guru, the consequences will be very serious. The Vajrayana vows are very rigorous. In fact, it doesn't only apply to the Vajrayana vow, it applies to Bodhisattva vow or the lay practitioner's vow. Even if one takes a refuge vow in the Three Jewels today and criticize the Three Jewels tomorrow, one will definitely take rebirth in the three lower realms. Some people might say that they dare not even enter the Vajrayana because it is too risky. Well, if this is the case, then so is taking refuge in Three Jewels. So is working in this mundane world. If so, in this world, every place is dangerous for immoral people. For good people, though, wherever you are, you can find your way to liberation. So we should feel really delighted about this. So next we'll talk about the encouragement to arouse the mind of bodhicitta. For the sake of all sentient beings submerged in the fearful ocean of samsara, in order to help them attain the internal happiness of Buddhahood, you shall shoulder the responsibility of benefiting others and discard the poisonous food of attachment to yourself. Firstly, the reason for arousing bodhicitta. For the sake of helping sentient beings wallowing in the cyclic suffering of samsara, to attain the temporal and ultimate happiness of Buddhahood, we arouse bodhicitta. So, what is the happiness in worldly people's eyes? Good food, nice clothing, for the city dwellers having social security, having medical insurance, and most people consider that money and assets are the source of happiness. Some of those sources of happiness come from money and accumulation of wealth. All sentient beings are pursuing for temporary goals. Thus, we must help them obtain both temporal happiness and guide them to achieve the ultimate happiness through the attainment of the realization of arhats, bodhisattvas, and Buddhas. In order to place them in ultimate peace and happiness, we must shoulder the grand responsibility to benefit others. This is a huge responsibility. In doing so, we should discard ego clinging as much as possible, which is like poison. Once you consume it, the result is horrifying. So it is stated in the way of the Bodhisattva. It says that if to serve myself I harm others, I will suffer later in the realm of hell. If for others' sake I harm myself, every excellence will be my heritage. Thus, selfishness, whether in our society or Buddhist sanghas, is the most appalling. Every practitioner must contemplate on that at all times. The most noble act is to benefit sentient beings. When Ralosawa was in retreat, he really wanted to stay in retreat for all his life. But one day his deity appears and told him, "You might as well go out and benefit beings. The merit of that, even for a brief moment, will be much greater than diligently meditating on the deity. In quiet isolation than in a quiet isolation for billions of eons. Hence, the merit of helping others with an altruistic mind, even for something insignificant, are far more greater than selfish aesthetic practices for endless years. The sources of all merits and happiness actually derives from the mind of benefiting others. This is stated in the way of Bodhisattva. It says that all the joy the world contains has come through wishing happiness for others. All the misery the world contains has come through wanting pleasure for oneself. Thus, we must not allow our bodhicitta to drift away at all times during our practice. Otherwise, as we just said, if you practice the great perfection without altruism, without bodhicitta, then according to Pachurinpoche, it is if you practice the unsurpassed great perfection practice the unsurpassed great perfection without the premise of bodhicitta, it will become the practice of Hinayana or Tirtika or the heterodox path. So, no longer supreme Vajrayana practice anymore. Many people did not understand the meaning of arousing the mind of bodhicitta before. But after having addressed this topic many times, I now feel quite relieved and content, because now I often encounter many people who would tell me that, please bless me that I could now give rise to genuine bodhicitta in my mind. Some might sincerely aspire so. Others might say that just to please me. I want to test if they're honest or not, so I try to look into their eyes carefully, but it's very difficult to tell. I'm wondering whether everyone truly thinks in this way. If these people sincerely make such aspiration, that is great. There was a time when I went outside and propagate the Dharma, and people would say to me, please grant your blessing so that I have the power to subdue others. Some say, please grant your blessing so that I can get super rich, make lots of money, and have a grand career. Another said that I have to open my third eye. My left eye is to see the worldly life, and my right is to see the supermundane Dharma, and the middle one is to see if my friends are conducting any evil behind my back. I have heard all kinds of odd things, but none of these are of ultimate motivations. The most ultimate motivation is to arouse the altruistic mind, which is very precious, and I hope that you all think the same way. Phuntsho Rinpoche used to say that the selfishness is poison-like. What an excellent metaphor! I often ponder upon this. People with strong sense of selfishness will fail sooner or later, regardless of where they are situated. Most of our arguments, afflictions, and quarrels are the product of selfishness, which would not appear at all if we were to become selfless. Thus, we should strive towards this goal and become a real bodhisattva. In fact, we need not pay attention to other people's opinion. Instead, we should just do whatever is possible to benefit others, while we're still alive and capable to do so. Whether people are aware of what we've done or not, it doesn't matter. I believe that some of the things we have done may not ever be known by others during our lifetime, but all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, as well as our gurus, are clearly aware. Other than that, our efforts may not be appraised or awarded by others. But the law of causality will prevail. Therefore, it is of no value to help others for the sake of our own reputation and fame, like some people trying so hard to showing off in front of others, rather than being contaminated by all kinds of selfish agendas. We should solely resolve and try our best to benefit others. This is the purpose of our aspiration, and that is all for today.